The Emissary of the Nine used to be a regular Awoken like the one seen around the tower and the reef, but something happened to her after the Red War that would change her life forever. Today we're going to explain together this Awoken woman's transformation into the Emissary of the Nine and the struggles that she went through on her journey throughout the system.
Perhaps you understand, not like the others, the ones who ask, beg for mercy. We are everywhere and nowhere at once. If you don't see us, you're not thinking small enough. Now go home. Safe Harbor is very far away.
The Emissary's story begins as a 27-year-old female named Nasya Sarwar. As we would come to know in some recent lore, she was one of the first passengers that would board the Yang Liwei colony ship on its way throughout the system. Now, realizing that this journey would take her far away from her home and create a new one among the stars, she wanted to bring some personal items with her that would remind her of Earth and her home. So in her knapsack, Nasya carried an unopened letter from her brother, her mother's ashes, some trees and plants from her neighborhood, and also 30,000 songs and videos. Aboard this vessel, Nasya would work one of the base jobs that would involve either taking care of people who couldn't care for themselves, trash collecting, and even some ship maintenance. This wasn't the best life or best job she could have had, but she hoped that if she worked her hardest, maybe it would cast light to the higher-ups and they would allow her to get a promotion. One where she can maybe get a civilian cryopod or caring for the ship's hydroponic facilities as she wished she could. Everything would soon change though when the darkness engulfed the solar system and collided with light outside of the Yang Liwei. When this happened, Nasya was ported into the distributary with the rest of the humans on board this ship and became what we know as the first of the Awoken race. Now, in case you aren't too familiar, this is the same ship that Aldrin and Mara were on as well. They were once human, they were on this ship, the same thing happened, and then they all awoke in the distributary as the first Awoken. So now that Nasya awoke, she didn't really remember what had happened before and named herself Nasan R. Here in the distributary, she began her first life under this tree where she made a small home. Now, she didn't really stay here too long, but she did light her campfire here when other Awoken would pass by and sort of welcome them in to stay for a while if they needed it. She wanders. She tries on lives like she is trying on city-tailored fashions. For a few weeks, she is a corsair, then for a whole summer, she is a field hand. When she tires of that, she balances books for an atom merchant who trades in radioactive materials. Nothing holds her. Seeing her silver jar, one man suggests that she might be a treasure hunter. The idea sends her into a deep subterranean cavern where she finds no treasure, but instead bioluminescent worms and a paladin who calls herself Zhurido. If you're looking for a job, Zhur says, I should introduce you to my boss. So from here, Zhurido introduced Nasan to a political figure within the distributary named the Diasrim. So we can see from that card that she didn't really know what she wanted to be. She was a paladin at one point, she tried a bunch of different things, but now under this political figure, she became a translator for the various conflicts ahead. Now this of course next was how she got introduced to Mara Sov, as Mara had that connection with Zhurido, they were super close, had that whole relationship, blah blah blah, and this is where that sort of meeting sprung from. Now where things begin to get a little bit crazy is when Mara announced that she was going to head back to the solar system and leave the distributary, sacrificing their mortality to figure out what happened to their ancestors. While proclaiming her plan to all these Awoken here, Mara Sov caught the attention of Nasan, who believed in her rule. She felt that she too wanted to learn about their ancestors and if they were alive. Now, once the Awoken did make it back to the solar system, they set up shop in the reef and began their own agenda. But among those Awoken who did make the trip back to Sol, some of them wanted to go to Earth to see what's left, right? Why travel all the way back here to the solar system and not let them know of our presence or the help we could provide? So Mara eventually let those who wanted to leave, but they could not come back. That was their one rule. So during that mayhem, Nasan had an argument with the queen that these people shouldn't leave. She would go and follow them and proclaim the great that Mara has to offer. Now eventually Nasan decided to make her way to Earth against Mara's wishes. They had a bit of an argument there, and when she was alone in a camp one night, a group of Risen came up and killed her in her sleep. Sometime later, what was Nasan would become a guardian, getting resurrected by a ghost and named Orin. Now when Orin awoke as a guardian, she had many adventures ahead of her. Now I'm not going to discuss all those here as this video would be super long, but you can find that all in the lore book if you wish. It talks about things like the Pilgrim Guard, the Last Safe City, and also her lover named Namki, who was a pilot for the Reef. But around this time, Orin convinced that lover Namki to smuggle her and her ghost back to the Vestine outpost, as she wanted to know what happened and why Mara was mad at her, why she rebelled against her queen. 2 paladins deliver her to Mara's Solve. Goal is not permitted in the court, nor is Namki. "I knew you," Orin says before Mara can speak. It is uncourtly etiquette, she supposes, but they are alone and she is too bold to fear offense. "What do you remember?" Orin gives a slight shake of her head. Moments pass. Mara too is comfortable with silence. Behind her mask of composed difference, her eyes are sharp with curiosity. "Why did I leave?" Orin asks. "You wished to be my emissary." "And you banished me for it?" She squints. "That doesn't seem like something you do." Mara then smiles faintly. "No." So after this, Orin sought what it meant to be a guardian and questioned her own existence. Her lover Namki was punished for 5 years for smuggling her into the Reef, but she herself was not, because she didn't really remember who she was, as she was a guardian now. So fast forward past some time, Orin did some activities, learned about a couple of things, and one day upon hearing of the death of Jiraido, Mara contacted Orin once more. "I would ask for my boon," the queen says with a shaking voice. It is the first time she dares to trust a guardian. It will not be the last. So Mara informs Orin of Jiraido's death and how it's a little bit fishy, and she gives her the strange coin that was found near Jiraido's resting place. From there, this piqued Orin's curiosity and she wanted to learn more about who did this and what had truly happened. It says this: "The search sends her deep into a sublunar cavern where she finds no enemies, but instead clouds of steam and a half-man with grasping tentacles where his face should be. Forgive them," he rasps as she crushes his windpipe in her fist. "Who?" she snarls, tightening her grip. His faith writhes with growing urgency. Reminding herself that she came here for answers first and vengeance second, she pushes him away. He staggers, steadies, reaches into his robes, and draws something out. "Orin," Goal warns, but she's already seen it. She hefts her warhammer and strikes him hard in the chest. It is like hitting a ball off of a tee, there is no resistance. He caroms off a dewy boulder with a sickening crunch. That is his spine, he will never stand straight again, and as he hits the ground, a tarnished silver jar slips from his fingers. The sound echoes as it bounces away into the dark. Orin uses a hunting knife and brute strength to puncture the jar's dented lid. She turns it over and pours a thin stream of gray pale powder into her gloved palm. Dust returns. It ever returns, the man chuckles wheezily. She looks up and he is gone. So after this whole encounter, Orin would begin to hallucinate a lot and describe seeing and thinking about the Nine everywhere. As this progressively gets worse and worse, Mara and Namki tell her to get some rest and that she should be fine and not to worry about it. As time passed though, her lover Namki would die, she'd get a little depressed, and she would also meet a man who she called Wu Ming, who is the Drifter. So those two talk about some things for a while, some pretty deep stuff, and she says he's a liar, a thief. She explains that his name was Dredgen Hope, that his real name was Eli, all this stuff, but then she decides, forget all this, I'm gonna leave. On the day she leaves to find the Nine, the Techians name her Orin the Lost. She raids a storeroom in the Vestine outpost, stuffing into her knapsack digital schematics for a Phaeton backscatter scanner, a jade coin, several bundles of dried queen's foil, and nothing more. She goes beyond the heliopause. It's a long walk, a sudden death. She sheds herself and emerges anew in glimmering scales of her old lives, an immigrant, a translator, an emissary, a hammer of judgment. They expect to claim her will, but she clenches it a little tighter. Her gifts can end wars. So that's definitely pretty crazy, right? That last card there, it says number 44, she goes beyond the heliopause. So that's explaining her becoming the emissary of the Nine and exploring things, but it also says a long walk and a sudden death. Now those two both happen to be previous lore entries, which is pretty cool, from Destiny 2 Year 1. A long walk deals with Orin contacting guardianless ghosts in the system, and a sudden death is most likely referencing Rasputin. So in summary, Orin was once a human aboard the Yang Liwei ship. She then awoke in the distributary as an Awoken, came back to Earth and died and became a guardian. From there she went to seek the truth of Jiraido's death and what the Nine truly were. This was then when she became the emissary of the Nine, or the sort of shell that Mara describes her as in the Queen's court.
It was a friend once, a confidant. Now it is a shell. Avoid falling into schemes of the Nine. Like the curse on my people, their games never end. All this, and we find ourselves at the whims of so many small minds. Leave now. My next audience does not find the presence of the travelers chosen to be respectful.
Anyway, Guardians, that's all I got for today's video. Let me know what other Destiny lore mysteries and secrets you'd like to see in future videos, and I thank you very much for watching. My name's Liwei, and I'll catch you Guardians in the next one.